And here we are. Hello, everybody. Good evening, wherever you are. It's evening in Sweden, where I am. So, ladies and gentlemen, there has been a little bit of a situation, which... Here we are. Hello. Oh, wait. Feedback. Let me do a little bit of a thing. Sorry. I'm a total rookie at this live stuff. Let me just get that out of the way. I had the window open, watching the stream. Anyway, feedback. Anyway, here we are. I think I will probably never do another live after this one, so please enjoy this one. It will likely be the last one. It's like nerve-wracking. I don't know why. I've done all kinds of talking into cameras and stuff, but the live thing, whew. Anyway, so there has been a development which has made it impossible for me to have Gregory Hoskins on live. So that's the bad news. The good news is I could see this development coming on the horizon and made a move to intercept it a couple of days ago. And so Gregory and I had a discussion, an interview on Monday night instead, and taped it. So I will hit a button here on this software if it all works. And you will see the interview. It just won't be live. That segment won't be live. This is live. That won't be live. It's about 30 minutes in length. And after that, I will come back again here if my nerves are still with me. And so something that is important to know is that if you put questions in the chat, the segment where I'm talking to Gregory isn't live, so that if those are questions in regard to what's going on in that conversation, it won't be responded to. But I will, if there's any questions or comments, I will bring those up after the segment with Gregory. Anyway, you might be wondering at this point, what is the thing that has come up that has made this made him being here live impossible? Well, I'm gonna let him tell you what that is. So in a few seconds I will click the button, and if I'm lucky with the technology, the interview will come on and Gregory will let you know. So I see, oh, happy to be here, love from Max. Lovely, Leanne, thank you. And I guess let's just get to it. Hopefully this will work, and you will soon see myself along with Gregory almost live 2 days ago. Let me find my button here. There it is. Are you ready? Here we go. So welcome to the this YouTube live broadcast thing, whatever they're called these days. First of all, I've promised people that I was going to be talking to you live, and this is now, by the time this is seen by people, this will be a pre-recorded thing. It's now Monday. It's going to be put out on Wednesday. But would you please update me and us a little bit about the reasons that we're not live in this segment on Wednesday?
It's because I, Gregory Hoskins, am about to become a grandfather. So everything else goes to the side. And after years of touring where I've missed like a significant amount of, milestones in the kids' lives, I promised that I would be available to my son. It's my youngest son, actually, which is odd to start the grandfather process on that end of the chain.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's what I'm doing. So we're doing this Monday. So I got my go bag packed and ready to go. I could just split when the time comes. So thanks for doing this. I appreciate the leeway. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, jumping right in. So the way I figured is we'll start just by talking. I want to ask you a little bit about your musical collaboration with Stephen Jenkinson and the Nights of Grief and Mystery and the studio albums and everything that you have been doing together. And then towards the end, I'll ask you a little bit about specifically about the film and the soundtrack. Sure. And how you feel about that. Yeah. So I feel like probably a lot of people who have followed the work that you and Stephen do together probably have heard the story of how you met and how you first interacted, and you left those CDs at his house, and he called you back, and all of that. But I have never heard so from that to being on the road and being in the studio, like there's a big in between space there, and I was wondering if you could talk about like what was the second encounter like, and what was it like when you first started actually working together, and was there like a moment where you or both maybe realized that, hey, we actually have something here, this is actually working?
The second encounter was about a month and a half after the first encounter, when I went out to the farm. He had written me back and said, you know, what he said about the recordings that I'd left. I responded by saying, that's great, thank you. It's nice that you said that. And if you ever need an opening act, I know this guy. That's what I write back. And so he writes back fairly quickly after that and says, actually, I have this little gig in a library in a town not too far from you. I don't know if you'd consider doing something. And then he, in that email to me, he actually described his relationship with Blue, the street performer slash preacher slash teacher slash doctor slash, that he had toured around mostly it's the East Coast for 7 years or so. He described that in a paragraph. And so that became the kind of the basis of understanding what I would do. And I said, sure, yeah, I'd love to do it. There was some confusion because I was actually performing at the time, and there was a gig that got in the way, but that worked itself out. And so we did it. And so it was in this little library in this little town. And I played with my back to the gathered group there. And I was completely unsure what the hell I was doing, trying to coax feedback out of some amplifiers. And I had my 2 amplifiers. I had no idea what was going on. And, somehow the gig ended. Like I don't really remember it, but I do remember being in the parking lot afterwards. And there's a small group of people, and there's Steven. And he was like over the moon about what had just happened. And I had clearly no clue as to what had just happened. Like, I had no idea. So I was just kind of like smiling and saying, yeah. And so he's already painting a picture about, we should take this on the road. And so we got into the car as he went back to his life, and I went back to mine, and we're in the car on the way back to my life. And I'm riding with Lisa, who, my wife slash partner. And she's excited about what she's seen, and I'm quiet. And she gets frustrated by me being quiet because I'm not being effusive about what just happened. And her line was, if you don't let this in, I'm going to punch you in the head. That was her line at my frustration. So clearly other people saw something, I didn't. And then that turned into he had a handful. He had 4 things in the States to do with regards to his book, Diewise, which he was promoting at the time. And I was on the tail end of this arts grant that had actually, in some ways, led me to him. And I thought it would be good to use the tailings of that grant money to just provide the opportunity for myself to go. So we did it all under the radar. I went into the States, which meant like having to get guitars there before me and all that kind of stuff. And then those 4 gigs turned into, I think the count was either 11 or 15. Just as we went along, just dates kept getting added. And at no point he might have a different take on it, but at no point did I think that this was a thing. But I trust that relationship I didn't know what it was, but I think I did know. What I came to understand quickly is that this thing had become another place where my material could live, kind of was granted a second life or a third life or a fourth life after, because I'd already been I've been doing what I've been doing for a long time by that point. Um, so I think on the surface I stayed for that, and then I came to understand that there was something important for me that if I wanted to learn, I just didn't have a real idea of what it would cost, which I came to understand later.
Oh, that sounds interesting. What did it cost, or what did you mean by that?
Well, my whole identity was built on who I saw myself as being uh, in a limited number of ways. I was a father, for instance. I knew that I'd been a husband, and at this point was trying it for another time, second time. Um, and then either on top of that or running neck and neck with those things, or quite possibly even a little bit ahead of those things, was my identity as a uh, I don't even know what to call it, a songwriter, a singer. I hesitate to say performer because I've never been that much of a guy, but I was the front person of any collective that I put together, whether it was like a 7 or 8 piece band, my first band with the record companies back in the day, or trios later on, like whatever it was, I was the front guy. So the first thing that had to happen is for me to relinquish that role, which I did quite happily, because I had, the arc of staying in the music game is to understand that you're not there forever. So I had kind of developed the sense of telling the whatever, say, like, if this is done for me, I'm done. It's over. It's okay. I'm fine. I'm ready to not be that guy anymore. So it wasn't that hard to step back, and I kind of I was relieved a little bit too to be able to not be the guy. But over the course of when the 4 gigs turned into 11, turned into another tour, turned into another tour, turned into, and all of a sudden it's now not 10 shows, but now it's 100 times we've done this, or 150 times we've done this, or 200 times. My lack of the capacity to relate to a microphone, to actually sew together something to say, was shocking. And so I realized that what I'd given up was my identity as that person who has that capacity to do that. And what I was watching every night that we performed was a guy who had stepped into that fully. So the gulf between what he was able to do and what I was not able to do, that's what the cost was. And I had to enter into that space willingly. So in short, I suppose you could say it cost me my identity, except I had the faith that I would find myself on the other side, which I think I'm doing right about now. It seems the last year or so I've just sort of been able to readjust. And what was the word that he used? Oh, he said to me a couple of months ago, "So you're talking about yourself quite deliberately." And I didn't understand, like most of the time, I don't understand what he says. So I had to ask him what he meant. And so he explained what the meaning of the word deliberate meant, which was not to be, I always thought it meant like a kind of a freeing, you're talking about yourself in a free kind of a way, but it's actually the opposite. It's deliberate. Like you're talking about yourself in a way that there's only one way that you can talk about yourself. And that shows up differently than just being able to say it about yourself. So I think that's been changing over the last year. But it's been a long haul.
Wow. So you've been touring together. You've been creating music in the studio together. I believe you have 3 studio albums out and maybe a 4th one in the works. And you've been on the roads at least since 2018, because that's when I saw you in the United Kingdom the first time.
Well, 2015 is when we first went out, and then nothing in 2016, but then 2017, 2018, 2019, nothing 2020, obviously, 2021, 22, 23. Yeah.
But last year you you really took it up a few notches, and you really went on a world tour and played gigs all over North America and all over Europe, at least the northern parts. You came to Sweden. I saw you in Sweden a couple of times. You came to my community in Järna, in the with the tent and the beers and the good vibes. And then you went on to Australia, New Zealand, and Hawaii, and it was really like a whirlwind of a madness situation from the outside looking at it. That's what it looked like. But do you have, I mean, maybe it's a blur for you, but do you have any moments or any stories or anything that happened along that particular tour that is worth circling back to or putting a spotlight on?
Stories. You're right. The thing is a blur because it's constructed to be that way. There's possibly a way of doing it where it's not a blur, but I wouldn't know what that's like. And I'm often, or not often, but sometimes the architect of the pacing of the tour, and I've made some just bad choices where the thing could be just a blur and it will never be more than a blur. There's lots of memories that I have touring with the band and I can see the video, like where I know where we are at what point in the night that we're at, and things are cooking. Or even if when I listened to one of the records, like a couple of days ago, I had to listen to a track from that record, the live record, called Come the West. And I was listening and I'm going, shit, that's amazing what we put together. It's like, kind of astounding because we just, these things weren't kind of written down on sheet music. So the story of last year is it's sort of one of survival. And then, we would often talk about what it cost, to do this, in all kinds of different ways. Clearly, we're clearly aware of what it meant to be moving around the planet these days, those costs. And then on a personal level, like I mentioned before, I was away a lot, so things would happen at home with my kids, and I was a Zoom call away, not able to be there. Those kinds of costs. And then it was becoming clear that there was some roads converging in terms of where Stephen has gotten to with what's going on in his body, and so that started to show up and wove itself into the story of the tour last year, and kind of at the same time it wants to put the brakes on the thing, but it also there's also this reaction to want to press on the gas harder because time is limited, and that whole sense of this possibly being the last time you ever do something, that was woven into these nights of grief and mystery. Literally the very first time we did it, after that one time where we didn't know what we were doing in that little show in the library basement. But by the time we got to New York, which was the first of the kind of proper shows, one of the first things I remember him saying, that I remember looking up at him and going, huh, was him evoking the finality of what we were doing, that you don't get to do this every day, that it's not a guaranteed. And that changed, it started to change. It became a kind of a touch point for me, understanding that, showing up in different ways in the rest of my life as well. So that's a hard thing to live with, though. And it's a hard thing to enact, how to be when it's going to be over. I mean, that's just probably fundamentally the big mystery of how do you be alive when you're not going to be. Make your choices, and so I think the studio records, for instance, were another way to investigate that.
Wonderful. It's nice to get a little bit of insight into this thing that, I mean, to me, it's just tracks in the computer that I listen to sometimes. There's CDs on the little CD player that in my house doesn't work very well. It has a random thing built in. You can't get it out of the random. So it's
right.
But yeah. And the show that I saw in the UK in 2018 3 times. I was like a groupie following you guys around, from Totnes to Brighton to one other place. But anyway, I thought maybe to not go too long. I don't know about these live things, if they're supposed to be long. I'm a newbie at being a YouTuber here, trying my best. But I thought maybe we should go and investigate a little bit about what we're actually trying to do, the project at hand, which is that I just went to the Orphan Wisdom farm, and I've been filming scenes unfolding, just people picking corn and the river being misty, and just everyday things happening at this quite mystical, somewhat magical place. And then interviewing Jenkinson on 3 occasions. And so cool to interview him in the writing cabin that I've read about, and realizing that it's an actual place. And like all of these places are actually real. And now I've contacted you with regard to the music, and you've seen very little of the footage. I've sent you a couple of little clips, but from what I've spoken to you about previously, and from what I've sent to you, how do you feel you will approach creating the music for this project?
Well, I understand the way. Right. I understand my relationship with the farm as the vector. It's like a vector point that I only really understand as the place that he leaves and the place that he returns to, and both of those things have are kind of burdens. They have a sense of burden to them. So the chance to relate to it in such a way that I'm almost going back to the very first time I met him at the place, and I understood in that walk that we took around his place how important the place was, and clearly nobody could see what was coming down the pike for either Hirai personally or professionally, or for that place, the things that would happen that have made themselves a part of that land. As I toured with Stephen, I came to start to understand in my own sense of self, my divorced sense of being from somewhere, or not having not having a relationship at all with a piece of land. So when this project came up, I thought that that it was another way for me to round out my understanding of a relationship that I've had that has been meaningful, deeply meaningful to me, and impactful. And it was another way to round out the understanding of that relationship by revisiting, especially at a time when, it seems like, maybe or maybe not, he's being asked to slow down. I don't know, it's his decision. But so the question becomes, well, where do you slow down to? Is it this place? So is this place going to come to mean something different now? Like the things that have been built and the decisions that were made. When we first got together, there's a small stand, you might remember them, a stand of pines that are near the barn, the barn the new barn, there was no barn there. But when 10 years ago, when we were walking through that stand of pine, they were all small. They were like, 4 feet high, 3 feet high. And I've never really, I've never walked with the guy. So we were walking and talking through there, and they had planted them, a couple of years earlier. And it was clear that he said clearly, I'm not going to be here when these are all grown up. This is, you do this not for your yourself. You do this for the people who come later. And you walk through now, and they're these things are now like 18 feet high. And along with that growth comes the understanding that the reinforced understanding that this is not forever. So I think I'm occupying the making of, or the opportunity to see what's inside of the footage that you shot, and to see what is to be, to see what I can discover sonically that would evoke what it's like to be in the time where there's a firm understanding of what side of the arc you're on, what side of the mountain that you're on. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on this call, and thank you for picking up the phone when I called you. And there's a Kickstarter campaign which is aimed to enabling me to paying you some kind of a decent fee. So I hope I haven't checked in today, but it was going pretty well yesterday. So that's good. And anybody who's listening to this who feels like joining in the campaign, there's some great... Oh, this is what I want to ask. Because so when you create these Kickstarter things, you have to, or you don't have to, but it's fun to make tiers and rewards, prices, whatever you want to call them. So that if you give $10 or $50, like there's different things. And I created one, and I think that you okayed it when we chatted over the first time we had this conversation about this project.
I okay everything, yeah. So it's like, I'm sure it's...
But it is, I think for the people who join in on the $100 level, I have promised them that you will send them a track from this from whatever this composition will be. Would you say something about that, even though it doesn't exist yet, and it's at this moment it's an empty promise, but please fill the promise with something.
I promise to send you something that I have not made yet. Promise, like I promise I'm gonna do that. Yeah, good. I think there's a place for. So I work out now. Part of the awareness of this does not last forever. This is my last kick at the can. So I go to the gym like 5 times a week. So I'm there and I listen. I can't listen to I can't bear this stuff that they play over the speakers. So I have these little things and I just play stuff. One of the things in preparation for doing this project was I started to go and listen to my friend Jonathan Goldsmith, he's a film composer, and he was also the person who produced my first 2 records, Condition North Records. And he's a brilliant, he also composed all the strings on a live concert recording that I did called Pleasure and Relief, and he was part of that stage band. He's an amazing composer. So, and he's got some fairly, decent known credits. So I went back and I listened, and his soundtrack to, I can't remember what film it was, but it was a recognizable film. His soundtrack kept me company as I lifted weights. It's the most improbable pairing of, wine and food in terms of sonic, all a banging gym tune.
That's a great promise to end this call with. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on, and
you're welcome.
Blessings on your coming wild adventures as a grandfather.
Hey, yeah, isn't it crazy? It's crazy. I'm going to do my best, man. As Jenkinson would say, I'm going to apply myself to the situation.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Thanks for doing this too. And, good on you for having an eye for a good story.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, We're back. So this is actually live. For those of you who missed the beginning, what you just saw was a taped recording. The reason for that is that today is the day that Gregory is... I haven't heard an update today, but it is supposed to be the day that he becomes a grandfather. So it turned out that this day was not very good for a live stream, but we didn't know that when we scheduled it. But anyway, so that was a taped recording, and now this is back to being live. I just want to mention a couple of things before we all disconnect and say goodnight. I want to circle back to the campaign that we spoke about in the interview. I'll put the link here. There's also the link in the description below that you can click in case you want to go and be part of this thing. I'm going to see if I can bring up the campaign so we can... I just want to mention a couple of things there. See if my technical abilities are with me. So hopefully you can see now the campaign, and hopefully it's live. You can see that it's at this point actually very close to being fully funded, so that's a beautiful thing. 76 backers, so just amazing. And maybe some of you listening now are one or two or three of those 76. Oh, just went to 77. Amazing. So beautiful. And scrolling down here, you can see, here you can read about what's going on and why we're trying to raise this money and what's it going to be for and everything. And if you look on the right-hand column here, you can see all the different rewards and stuff. And the most important thing I want to mention as far as the rewards go is that the first one here at 150 Swedish kroner, which is about $15, includes an invitation to see the film before everybody else sees it. It'll be something like this, with like a Zoom thing where we gather and like I'll introduce the film. Maybe Gregory will be there. I don't know who else. Maybe Stephen and Natalie, other people. And then we'll watch the film, and then we'll regather in a Zoom meeting and have a space to share some thoughts. So that's actually will be extended to everybody who, in case, you might be a student, you might not be willing to part ways with $15 for various reasons. There's a box up here where you can pledge any amount. So even just $1 will get you this invitation to watch the film before everybody else. So that's pretty cool. And then going down the list here, you get your name in the credits at $30. You get to download and own the film at $50. And then what I was talking with Gregory about is the exclusive music track download, which we don't know what it's going to be yet, but as you heard in the interview, it might be what did he say? A banging gym tune, which doesn't sound very Gregory Hoskins, but we'll see. There's already 8 backers at that level, so that's beautiful. One other one that I want to mention is the bonus material package, in case you feel like parting ways with $250. So this is, I interviewed Stephen 3 times, and they were lengthy interviews on various topics, and I will use some of those in the film. But let's be honest, 3 interviews times an hour and a half, and the film itself is going to be 30 minutes maybe. So very little from all of that material is going to end up in the film, and everything else is going to be turned into, let's call it bonus material for now. It might get, hopefully, a better name eventually. And we don't know exactly what we'll do with that material, but whoever gets on board at the $250 level will receive a download link for that regardless, or however we end up using it later. So that's pretty cool, but as I said, let me see if I can switch cameras. Yes, I could. As I said, I mean, even just throw in $1 if you want to be invited and just feel like you're part of this thing. And we all have different abilities as far as paying for stuff. So it's just, or $0, that's totally fine too. The film will be available. It'll be released and available to the world at Campfire Stories. So you can also just sit tight and wait for it to be released. I think that's all I had for this session, and I'm so glad to have had a bunch of you watching all the way through. Thank you so much. And some people will maybe watch this later when it's not live anymore, but it'll be up on YouTube, so that's cool too. Whew, made it through. Thank you so much. Have a good evening or whatever time it is where you are, and signing off.